Well, good morning, everyone. Grace and peace. Welcome to Find the Intersection. My name is Paul Dezay. It's this rainy day here in Columbus, Indiana. In fact, it's a rainy week. Hopefully, you're doing well wherever you are. Today, we're going to be in Ezekiel chapter 17, verses 22 to 24. Ezekiel chapter 17, verses 22 to 24. There's a chart for the week as we're preparing ourselves for this coming Sunday. So these four passages, the ones that you see in the four corners of the chart, are the passages that have been designated in the Revised Common Lectionary for this coming Sunday. On Fridays each week, we talk about the themes, the threads, the intersections that are woven through these four passages. Today, we're going to be focused on the bottom left-hand box, Ezekiel chapter 17, verses 22 to 24. Ezekiel wrote down his oracles, or at least was communicating his oracles during the time around the Babylonian conquest. And so what we end up seeing here is a lot of judgment against Judah. And then the second half of the book is a lot of hope for restoration. And so in this particular passage, we see, let me say earlier in the chapter of Ezekiel 17, you have a couple eagles, and one representing Babylon and another representing Egypt. The eagles represent empire or superpower. And so what we end up seeing here in verse number 22 of this chapter is the Lord God proclaims, I myself will take one of the top branches from the tall cedar. I will pluck a tender shoot from its crown, and I myself will plant it on a very high and lofty mountain. What we see here is, instead of one of the other eagles, the eagle of Babylon or the eagle of Egypt, what we see here is God himself will take a shoot from the top of a tree and plant it on a mountain. In other words, God is doing what these empires have the power to do. God is doing it himself. And it just goes to show you that oftentimes empires or superpowers, these political ideologies, these governments, these nations think that they are in control. But in reality, what we end up seeing here is that God himself is working. And the Almighty, the all-powerful God is at work right now. He was at work in those days. He knows work and right now. And so those superpowers, empires, is kind of a facade of control and power. But ultimately, God is active in this moment of time. And so that's what we see here. God is the one who is taking this and planting this. And then the next verse talks about it will grow and bear fruit, and birds will nest in the tree. This, for many scholars, they believe, is a hope, a prophecy of someone in the line of David, a shoot, a branch, like you see in Isaiah and other Jeremiah. What we end up seeing here is a prediction of a new dynasty, somebody from the line of David that will rise up. Some scholars believe that that's what this is pointing to. And because of this tree that is growing, because of the fruit, all will know. It kind of reminds me of the light of the world. It's the salt of the earth. All will know as they gaze upon this tree growing on mountaintop, Mount Zion, maybe, which is a prediction of Jesus. And then the last section, the last verse, really, it says, the Lord will bring down the tall tree and raise up the lovely tree, and make the green tree wither and the dry tree bloom. And this is interesting. It's kind of a reversal of fortune. Kind of reminds me of Mary's Magnificat. It's this idea that God will turn the tables, and so those that are less fortunate will become fortunate. There is an inclusion to the least of these. We see God's presence with the poor, marginalized. God kind of balances the scales in a certain way. With those that have power kind of fall down, and those who don't have any power arise invited to the table to feast. So we see this imagery here. All of this is a reminder for us today in our world. Yes, it's different. We don't have invading armies, but we have a political, very tense world, right? And in our country, there's a lot of division and polarization. And either both parties kind of feel like they have control and they have power. I read this text and I'm reminded that God is the one who is guiding and working in the moment. And we might not see it, but he's reversing the fortunes. He's bringing down those in power and rising up those who are not invited to the table, but they're invited to his table. And because of what God is doing, his kingdom, as Jesus referenced with the mustard seed parable, is like a seed that is growing and it will grow. And birds will nest in this tree of the kingdom. So I'm babbling a little bit today, but hopefully you find that helpful. What did you get out of this passage in Ezekiel? I'll be back tomorrow to talk about Psalm 92, and Friday we'll come back and talk about the intersections. Hope you have a great week, everyone. Grace